you just talked about everybody being soft in these younger generations, and I completely agree. And I think that's realistically, I would argue that could be the biggest problem for my generation. I say maybe your guys' generation as well. You said that you thought it was the mating crisis for the younger generation. That was the biggest problem that they're facing.
Yeah.
Can you maybe differentiate between the two? And like, because I feel like it's hard to argue that being soft isn't the biggest problem. Everybody my age, Gen Z, et cetera, they can't do anything. They can't suffer. Suffering is bad. Suffering equals evil to them.
Well, the two are intrinsically linked, right? What you have is a broad culture of risk aversion. You could just call it that. It's like people just don't want to do risky things, largely. People are getting their driver's licenses later. They're moving out of the house later. They're getting full-time employment later. They're not having as much casual sex. They're not having as much party time. They're not going out and drinking. All of these things would have been moral panics had they been the other way around. But I think people are just interested about, okay, what does this suite of traits, this suite of changes mean? And I think it's pretty evident that it's called extended adolescence. It basically makes adults into children for longer, and people don't end up growing up. How this relates to the mating crisis is that if you are still living at home, which is the most common living arrangement for men under the age of 35, if you're still living at home with your parents, it's going to be very difficult to date. If you don't have a reliable job, it's going to be very difficult to make you an eligible partner. If you don't have your driver's license, it doesn't make you seem like an independent person. So all of these issues are all interwoven. But the mating crisis and victimhood culture are like two distinct problems that need two distinct solutions, but they feed into each other as well.
So why do you think it is that people are so comfortable constantly being comfortable and they can't ignore the elephant in the room, that they can't put themselves in a position of voluntary suffering?
Because you don't need to. There's no reason to put yourself through suffering. We can go from an air-conditioned house to a heated seat car. We can Uber Eats ourselves a well-cooked meal while we watch Netflix on the TV that we Amazon primed to ourselves. Like, so many of the rough edges of life have been eroded. So why would I need to do at what point do I find something difficult to do? People have built buildings inside of which there are heavy things that you pay to have access to so that you can go in and lift these heavy things up and then put them down in the same place. And it's called a gym. We've had to artificially create discomfort in our own lives because it's been completely eroded from our normal existence. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Like, life has been made incredibly comfortable and convenient, and it's fantastic. And why shouldn't it be? Like, is that not what progress and technological advancement is supposed to do, to improve mortality, improve quality of life? But there's a difference between what you want and what is good for you. And what people want is often immediate comfort, and what is good for you is some degree of resilience training. And also, like, even though we're in his city, I'm not like a David Gogginsite, like, never find time to watch Netflix, never find time to chill out. Like, that's not me. That's not the way that I'm wired. I think that it's important to have a chill out practice as well as it is to have a training practice.
So do you think it's just people are becoming too complacent? That maybe things are too good? Maybe they're not bad enough to change, but the situation is just good enough.
It comes at a massive cost to do what feels good rather than what is needed at a given moment, right? It comes at a huge cost. Why can people not see that one is, in the long run, just overall objectively better for them? Well, and they're fine making that sacrifice.
How do people get fat? One meal at a time. Like one day at a time, where they eat 200 calories or 500 calories or 1,000 calories more than they expended over and over and over again over a very, very long period of time. And the same thing goes for this. Like, you've read Atomic Habits. Mm-hmm. You know what, you know how it is. Things that are good for you typically have pain immediately and pleasure in the long run. The lead measure is discomfort and the lag measure is progress. Why would you not optimize for the other one? You never actually see the lagging progress until it catches up with you and you've got 30 pounds overweight and you can't fit into the old set of jeans that you used to have, right? Everybody is going to optimize for what's exactly in front of them, which is usually comfort. And it's not going to be discomfort. So I think that, is it a byproduct of what I've called like the male sedation hypothesis, which I think works for women as well? Screens, social media, and porn sedating people out of what would have typically motivated them to go out and do things. Yeah, I think that contributes an awful lot because people can get titrated doses of community through social media, entertainment through screens, and sex through porn, so that they're not motivated sufficiently to go out and do what would have had to have happened 100 years ago, which is like, entertain yourself. or find friends yourself, or have sex yourself.
So you always speak about casual sex, or I shouldn't say you always, but it seems as though
I just can't stop talking about it. Can't stop talking about it.
You walked in here, you're like, yo, man, casual
Guys,
sex.
yeah,
It seems like you're speaking about it in a positive light. That is something that's needed in some capacity. Because the way that most people, I feel like, see it as like, you know what, it's me getting that instant gratification. It feels awesome, although it's probably not a smart thing. There are STDs. There's the risk of pregnancy. There's also just, you know, knowing that my eventual soulmate is going to know that I've been in bed with 100 people. You know what I mean? Like there are certain sacrifices that you make with casual sex, but you always speak about it like casual sex is an all-time low.
Casual sex isn't an all-time low. That the solution to that isn't have more casual sex.
It's low, so we got to make it high.
Yeah. Fucking make casual sex great again. So no, I'm not. I'm bringing up, and I do bring this up quite a bit, that 50% of men say that they're not looking for short-term or long-term relationships. Right, like between the ages of 18 and 30. We have all been through a good chunk of that period, and you know what reality distortion field the male sex drive is like during that period. I think it's an interesting comment on, oh my God, guys aren't looking for long-term or casual relationships during the period in which your sex drive is maybe at its highest. Wow, like, isn't that an interesting cultural comment? The solution isn't like just, you know, turn it into a Playboy mansion free for all and let people just fucking on the streets. Like that's not what I'm proposing. But I do think that if you were to look at the problem of victimhood and the problem of the mating crisis, i.e. people not getting together and not being bothered about doing it, maybe victimhood is upstream from the mating crisis, but I think the mating crisis is going to kill people more quickly. Dr. Robert Waldinger, the guy in charge of the longest ever longitudinal study on what makes people happy, the single biggest predictor of what keeps you living the longest are the number of relationships that you've got. More than stopping smoking, more than going to the gym, more than changing your diet. The single biggest predictor is how many close friends you've got.
Doesn't that mean instead of focusing on, let's say, optimizing going to the gym or not drinking or no caffeine, we should optimize instead on friendships and relationships?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm totally on board with that. One of the problems that you have is you need another person to do that. Like you can go to the gym on your own and you can do the ice bath on your own and you can do the sleep on your own, but you need to find other people. But I wouldn't disagree. Maybe one of the things that was lurking below the surface, what was it? Nicotine, caffeine, alcohol, loneliness.
Yeah.
You know, maybe that would be something else that would get thrown in as well. Almost certain.
Yeah. Where do you see the future of that? Because it seems as though we're not going in a direction where loneliness is getting any better. It only seems worse, and it seems as though different apps are really designed to keep you on the app as long as possible, and they're only getting better. Like all the algorithms that I've noticed for shorts and TikToks are only getting more potent. And so it seems as though at the current rate that we're going, they're only going to continue to get better and better to the point where you're going to go on TikTok and it's going to be so perfectly curated that you can't possibly get off of it because the cliffhanger after every single one is going to be so great.
I don't disagree. It's scary, man. If you think that the algorithms are compelling now, at least they're restricted by most of the content having to be made by a real person somewhere. When you've got AI feeding the front end and algorithms pushing out on the back end, you basically have an unlimited amount of infinitely split testable, limbically hijacking content that will just continue to race to the bottom of the brainstem. So yeah, I don't disagree. I think it's a massive concern.